to think about it. Any frustrations?
I'm sorry.
Memory. Memory.
Memory, yeah.
I know.
Memory is something I can't help with. I mean, no, I mean, well, it's the same subject we just talked about. You know, some things you just have no options but to memorize, which is why I will go through some of this again in a second. But I just want to know if there are any specific things that you'd like me to talk about, go over, any questions, any... Yes, Sarah.
Oh, sorry. I have a few people that, just like buses, they come all at once, don't they? And it feels like they're all neurological after post-surgery, you know, numbness, discomfort. That I find that really hard to...
And how soon after surgery?
Well, different people. But so for one chap, he had a benign sort of cyst tumour on his spine and they severed a nerve. And he was all right for a while, and then sort of later on this numbness starts, and then he gets that cold feeling in his legs. And I've only treated him once, and at the time he was quite elated, but you know, I think it was that post-acupuncture elation that sometimes people can get, and I'm pretty sure he's going to come back and go, well, yeah, it lasted an hour, and then it's back. But I don't have all the, I don't know what you call them, you know, the wires, the patchy stuff.
Oh, okay.
I don't have those.
Although in this case, I know that for numbness, you know, all the diode stuff is very useful for numbness, granted.
Yeah.
But in his case, since it really comes from the spine,
Yeah.
I'm assuming L4, L5?
Yeah. Well, yes.
Then, well, if anything, I would possibly just tape aluminum foil on, since you don't have the whole equipment, just tape aluminum foil on the L4, L5 and have him wear that, you know, say overnight with something tight around it so it keeps it on the skin, just to pull out the inflammation from the actual area. Because the damage is, in a case like this, is really on the spine. The damage is, it's not peripheral neuropathy, even though it's peripheral, but it's really, I mean, we don't have a concept called central neuropathy, but in his case, it really is more like a central situation. It comes from the spine. So all the diode stuff is very useful in terms of opening stuff locally.
Okay.
His local thing that needs to open is really, and especially if it's not too far in, because if it's like for 3 years now, all right, then once the nerve is being damaged, there starts building up damage further down the leg. Okay, so it's no longer just the spine, but as long as it's just from it's close to the operations from the spine, I would concentrate on the L4, L5 business, which means spleen 9, you know, which is kind of standard.
Yeah.
And kidney 7 usually does a really good job for the area.
I did use those, yeah.
Yeah. On the back, you want to do sacroiliac ligaments. Do 2. You want to do a point that we call heart of soul. So it's not kidney 1. You just slide up. Yeah, because, well, officially kidney 1. I mean, some people will say that's kidney 1, but this is officially not kidney 1. This is what I call heart of soul. Kidney 1 is here. The definition of kidney 1 is, you know, 1/3 from, you know, it's supposed to be 1/3. So kidney 1 is usually here, and heart of soul is here. That's a very good point for spine.
Oh, great.
And then I would still do T11, T12, T7, and T5, because again, these are all curves in the spine, so they affect the rest of the spine. You can try do 19, might do a good job. Do 15, might do a good job. You want to do Spleen Test 9-10, and Yao Yan Shu, the lumbar eye, because just opening the spine out.
Oh, so it's like you want to just imagine trying to create as much space as I can here. That's the.
Yeah. And on the front you have your spleen 9, your kidney 7, and REN 12.
I did REN 12.
So REN 12 relates to the spine and neurological conditions. The rest depends on this the so-called constitution, on his type.
Yeah, we didn't
so
have.
You want to address that as much as possible. You know, and sometimes you can't tell, because someone who comes after operation, they just want, you know, there's like this urgency for this problem, and this is what. So what I do is when a patient comes in, they have a form they fill in, and I ask them, all it's asking is the age and the incident. I want to know the medical history, you know, and I don't want to talk about it. Because if you ask them, I want them to fill it out in advance, because when you talk to them, first of all, it gets all confused, both chronologically and in terms of what actually happened. And it's a big waste of time to talk about medical history, in my opinion, because people, it's a very subjective issue. It seems like, well, this is just what you have medically. It isn't like that, okay? So it's better that they write it down. So I ask people to fill it out, preferably at home, or I leave them, because I've noticed if I don't leave them, if I happen to be in the room, it's a never-ending process. Just leave them in the room, have them fill it out, you go somewhere else. I mean, if you have to lock yourself in the toilet, you know, it really doesn't matter where you go. And let them go, and then you have an idea of what actually happened to them in their life, and then you can make up your mind about it.
Okay.
So I find that asking people for the medical history orally is not a good idea, especially if they come after an operation, because in their mind, nothing relates to the problem except the operation. And that's not necessarily true. Yes, it's possible that a nerve has gotten nicked. In fact, it's most likely. But it doesn't mean that you did not, I mean, how do you say that to a patient? You contributed to this through the blah blah incidents that have happened in your life. Well, it's like you're blaming them for something that's really, it is the surgery, but they've had a ripe situation waiting to happen with the right incident. You know, there's always more than one cause and condition. Okay?
I was
Nothing is
thinking
made out of
cyst
one
as well, because he had that benign.
Though there was a cyst.
Yeah, that's what they went in and removed, and they told him they cut a nerve.
Yeah, but we removed the cyst and a little bit of a nerve.
Yeah.
A little extra, we won't charge you.
Yeah, and they did say
So
to him.
since it's a cyst, the possibility of liver aid doing
Yeah.
something useful is there. Yeah. I would always look, you know, because of these spinal operations, there's always a possibility of some weird twist. I would look at the possibility of gallbladder 26 also. So for example, for Siobhan, the reason why I went for gallbladder 26 is once she starts pointing at the inside of the leg, that's the domain of gallbladder 26. Not so much the outside of the leg. Okay?
Thank you.
Sure.
Out of curiosity, do you have your medical form up on the professional corner?
No, but if you go into the patient corner,
Oh, there is
there's
one
an
there.
intake form. Yeah. So yeah, if you go on my website, you can see the intake form. Yes.
You test the baseline points, 13 or 14 spleen, okay. But when there is an intestinal problem,
Yes, then I don't have a baseline. Okay. Yes. So I test left side spleen 13, 14, or whatever, because for most people, if they don't have intestinal problem, that should not raise any problem. So they can feel what my fingers feel like. If a person has something in the intestines already, like I know they have ulcerative colitis or something, you know, I can't use that as a baseline. So there is no baseline. You know, I can't give them the feel of, because I don't know where else in the there is no other area in the abdomen that is likely to be neutral for them. So as you press, they sort of get a feeling of, okay, this is really ouchy, this is acceptable, this is whatever. So yeah, I don't have any. The only purpose of that spleen, you know, 13 area. Pressing is to give them an idea of this is what my fingers feel like, so that they're used to it. Because most people, no one's ever touched their abdomen. It's just not, you know, certainly not poking in. It's just not kind of what, you know. It's like because you know, you shake someone's hand, they say strong, weak, whatever. I mean, we're constantly doing that, but no one pokes their abdomens except people like me. So, but does that answer the question? Yes.
For somebody that doesn't have really much in medical history, but parents, all strokes, we'll say, and parents, what would you prioritise?
So no medical history, but parents had strokes.
Parents, yeah, strokes.
So stroke can be a number of different things, and you know, so it's not as conclusive. It could be a circulatory problem. But it could be other things. So yeah, I mean, so the question is, did both parents have high blood pressure? I mean, you know, are the strokes similar in a way? But yeah, it's a place to start with. But again, some people have no medical history, including no family medical history, and that's fine. That can happen. So you work with what you have, or you make up stuff. You know, that does happen. I do make up stuff sometimes. You know, I mean, I can't make up. Okay, so for example, somebody shows liver and they have no medical history, and I start making up stuff like, do you come from a family of lots of drinkers? You know, so because, of course, in Ireland, it may be like, the answer must obviously be yes. So, I'm sure in the States it often is also, but, you know, it kind of, you know, you start making stuff up, and then, just like with the medical history, you're trying to confirm, is it true or not? So it almost doesn't matter if I made it up, or they made it up. It's all just imagination at the end of the day. Can I prove the imagination by clearing something in the abdomen? So you can make up a story. If the story you're making up, ideally is based on actual medical history and actual abdominal findings. But at the end of the day, at the end of deciding the treatment, if your story clears the abdomen, and it's a reasonable story, you did a decent job. The problem is, because you can clear the abdomen in many ways, the problem really is finding the best story, the best reason why you're choosing this strategy, as opposed to some other strategy. Because there's always more than one strategy to clear the abdomen. So, some people don't have medical history. Some people don't have abdominal findings. What happens when a patient comes in, there's absolutely nothing in the abdomen, nothing in the neck, nothing anywhere? What do you do then? You do what you get. I mean, you know, it's like, this is not a style that you can say 100% of people will fit into, because there will be people with no abdominal findings. It really does happen, you know. So, it's all very nice that I want confirmation, but I'm not going to get confirmation. So work with what you have, and if the person on top of it is coming for an internal disorder, meaning it's not like, or they're coming for a musculoskeletal problem, but they can't produce it. This is the most frustrating thing that ever happens. I have terrible sciatica. When do you get it? Well, if I sit for 30 minutes, I get sciatica. It's like, yeah, I'm not going to wait 30 minutes and test each point. You know, it's not reasonable. You know, and when I poke nothing, you know, there has to be a weird condition. Now, sometimes people say, if I walk up the stairs, you know, I can produce it. So, okay, one flight of stairs, I can handle that. But, you know, if they say I have to walk 5 flights of stairs before my knee starts hurting, I can't produce it. I mean, it's very hard to produce. So you do what, you know, I'm sort of showing, I'm talking about relatively idealized situations, just like any protocol is. It's an idealized thing that supposedly all people should fall into. Then you take that and you modify according to what your patient needs. And then you take the ideas and you try and apply them, and sometimes it's going to fail and sometimes it's going to work. So if a patient has no abdominal findings or no medical history, you keep going. And you do what you can. And sometimes you work purely by dogma or by theory or by whatever. Because you can't confirm. Is it what I like to do?
Clinic, isn't it? When you
Sorry?
The most difficult thing I find with this is when you get patients like that girl yesterday, who is so vague about whether she's feeling pain or not.
Are we talking about the obvious one?
Yeah. The one that was on that was just like, it's so difficult to measure and organise your thoughts when somebody's just being so vague about it.
One of the things you have to accept is that patients, humans generally are a lot more so-called what we love to call in acupuncture school Shen disturbed than we might like to acknowledge in society in general. The reality is that most of us are Shen disturbed, and most of it. I know that for myself as a patient, you know, I I go to my physical therapist and I start talking about, how, well, I can't do this. No, okay, I was a dancer, so I have an excuse. Okay, but I'm just making up that I have an excuse. The truth is, he's looking at me like I'm from fucking Mars. And I've gotten used to like, okay, like, excuse me for saying this weird stuff, but this is... I mean, we all have very subjective understanding of our body. And I'm a medical professional. I should be able, supposedly, to be able to communicate with other professionals. And yet I can't. The reality is it doesn't work because once it comes to your own body, you know how, well, there was someone else, it wasn't her, someone else did that yesterday. That's incredibly typical. You're pressing somewhere and they either take your hand and move it, or they point somewhere else.
Yeah.
And it's like, excuse me, we didn't ask you about that. I said, this. Fucking concentrate. They can't. It's, no. You have to have a certain sort of like, you can call it a sense of humor about it, or you can call it patience. You just kind of go, okay, this is how people do it. It's part, if it was so simple that you go left stomach 26, 27, right stomach 22, left abdomen 16, blah, blah, blah. If it was just the map, which I have a video on, by the way, so, so you can see the mechanics of, just doing it purely mechanically, There's no patient there, it's totally a PowerPoint, okay? I'm not treating PowerPoints, okay? If patients come in the weirdest shapes and forms, you just have to deal with it, and it's annoying sometimes, and sometimes it's fascinating, and you modify what you do according to what, but yes, most people are not so easy, do not answer so easily. I would say over 50% of patients can't quite tell you by percentages. I have to coax it out of them. So my favorite thing, and maybe I'm not as skillful, maybe there's better skillful ways of doing it, but I tell them, okay, we're going back to second grade when you learn percentages. It's like I really try to explain to them why it's important for me to know it's 20% better, 50%. And if they can't, I say, okay, a quarter, half, 3/4 better. That's good enough. Nobody asks for 62.5% better. I'm not asking for precision, I'm asking for general. And eventually, most of them seem to understand once you sort of move a point, once they get like a big difference, they understand the difference between it's a little bit better and wow, it really is better. And if you move the point, they start to understand why it is that you need it. Okay, so unfortunately with this style, I am dependent on the patient for feedback. But at the same time, it's an advantage. But you have to be patient around how are you going to extract it. Part of it is, being skillful in whatever skillful for you, for your personality. But it is going to come across, this is not quite as mechanical as it looks.
Yeah, thanks.
You've seen every single patient we've had has had their own twisted variation of not being easy.
And does it give clues about
The person?
the person?
So what I used to say, and I still believe that's true, when a person is really incapable of relating to the question how much better it is, or they're varying it, 1 second it's, oh, it's not better, oh, I didn't know, like under the third toe is likely to be a very important point for them. This vagueness, this inability to relate to the body, And then you have people who over-relate to the body, I'm sure my physical therapist would put a third toe on me. I'm like, okay, he's giving me way too much information, I don't know what the hell he's talking about. So, yes, but it does mean that there are some, the autonomic nervous system just can't cope with the input and classify it and express it. Eileen?
Just a different question.
Yes.
I've seen a lot of people more recently with the diagnosis of POTS.
Of what?
Of POTS. Postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, Have you not come across it?
I haven't.
It's like loads more people get getting it, or
Whether in
whether
virtue on a
loads
table.
more people are getting the diagnosis. You know,
Is it
one thing-
tachycardia as opposed to vertigo? So it's the same thing as,
Yes,
yeah.
they have rapid heart, they, flake out, low energy, there are other features about it, but I'm thinking probably, in this world, it's cardiac and ANS, or maybe even blood pressure involved, but I wanted to ask you what you thought, but maybe it's just not,
Yeah,
diagnosis that's happening in the States.
well, I can't say that I'm aware of having seen it. But it's definitely it's definitely some sort of weakness of the nervous system, because so you have to remember that it may not even be a true cardiac situation, but it might be, or it might develop ultimately into one, because if the heart has to keep doing that, it will eventually possibly weaken the heart. But the pacemaker is part of the autonomic nervous system. So one of the things that you will find on many people is left UB 40, 42, 43, 44 area, and that's an autonomic nervous system sign, which I release with do 2. The inner border of the scapula on the left side.
42,
Okay.
43.
Will show that, because, and I think, whereas the right side won't, okay? Like, so in lung issues, for example, both inner borders of the scapula will show, but this is only left side shows. That's, I would say 80 to 90% of the people show that, because we are, like every culture, we think that we're a very stressed out culture. So I think that it's the nature of people to just be stressed out, okay, period. Whether you lived 2,500 years ago, or whether you're living now, it's just the reality. So, and I release that with do 2. But I would say that this tachycardia that happens when they stand up, is it standing up from acupuncture or just in general?
It's nothing to do with standing up, actually. It's
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought
people
you said.
just have sort of, sometimes fairly continuous and sometimes episodic. This is just their life. This is what they're.
So every so often they'll get a tachycardia.
For some people, it seems some of the talkers. I'm not the only person who's seen people.
No, I think there's like palpitations. Or, I don't know.
Wait, palpitations is different. Remember, palpitations is not the same thing.
There's a diagnosis.
So it just happens.
I've seen a couple and they've done a bit better than I'm seeing.
So they just have tachycardia episodes. They don't necessarily have rapid heartbeats on a regular basis.
Tachycardia is rapid heartbeat.
No, but it sounded like it's episodal.
Well, for some people it seems like it's kind of fairly continuous, but sometimes worse. And
Okay, so I misunderstood.
For other people it might be episodic, and there's a lot of, feeling dizzy, feeling faint, feeling weak, having to sleep, just almost like a chronic fatigue sort of picture, but with all this kind of rapid heartbeat issues.
Okay, I misunderstood. I thought it was something when they get up, they have rapid heartbeat.
Okay. It's defined as postural tachycardia syndrome, POTS, is an abnormal increase in heart rate that occurs after sitting up or standing. It typically causes dizziness, fainting and other symptoms.
Yeah, but they seem to have it, a lot of the people I've seen with this seem to have it sort of whether they're sitting, standing, lying down, whatever.
Yeah. Hot showers is notorious for if they have a shower. I know for the lady I was treating, if she had a hot shower, then she would.
Sponge baths.
Yeah, she'd be out.
So what I would say is REM form. If for the points for tachycardia generally are these. So yeah, because now it sounds like it is a cardiac condition. So
You were right, sorry. It says it's an ANS condition.
It's
The POTS UK says POTS is due to normal response by the autonomic nervous system
Okay.
and characterised by orthostatic intolerance. Such symptoms include palpitations, lightheadedness, fatigue, swelling, nausea, fainting and headaches associated with a persistent increase in heart rate from the lying to upright position. Sorry.
No. So if for a person who the tachycardia comes from the postural issues, I would say that's an autonomic nervous system disorder. I would check the neck, specifically the occiput. And I would treat autonomic nervous system. I might treat them just like blood pressure and with the addition of Sanjiao 8, and I would add REN4 because REN4 is a big point for for cardiac issues with rapid pulse. Okay?
If this person normally is a heart pulse, so on bed, you know, if she's slow, would you still then, if the person experiences tachycardia on the exertion or just on the nervous things, do you...
Well, I still do, yeah. So for example, I had a patient who after, he had open heart surgery, because he has actually, his pulse has normally been slow, but he had these episodes and then he had rapid heart rate, and it took a few months before it went back to relatively slow. While the pulse was, while he was still in a more tachycardic era of his life, REN4 was still appropriate.
Okay, but if you're seeing this person today...
And today this pulse is like really slow, like boom, boom, boom. No, I would not do REN4. By the way, I just want to be, this is not universally accepted, but this is the way I evaluate it. I'm not counting how many beats per minute there are. Okay, that is just one way to do it. There is a quality of pulse that is slow. There is a pulse that even if it might when you count it be actually 70. But it feels, there's almost like there's a delay in it. It just feels very measured, like this. It has a certain slowness to it. I can't describe it any other way. It's not the speed only that counts. I know that sounds really odd. And then there's a pulse that can be officially 60 beats per minute, but it will feel in your fingers, it feels like it's rushing in, that it keeps coming, and it's rushing, like there's no break. It's almost like when there's a space, there's a more clearly defined space. It's almost like, okay, I think I can define it. If the space between the beats is greater than the actual time space that the beat itself takes, I would call it a slow feeling pulse. Let me see if I can draw it. So here we do not know the speed. We don't know, let's say this is 17, which is normal, okay? If the pulse feels like this, sorry, forget this. This space here is greater than this space here. That's slow. Okay? It's going to make your fingers feel slow because it feels like duck, duck, duck. There's a space between the beats. If, on the other hand, you see, you're going to feel boom, boom, boom. It's the same number of beats per second, but each beat takes longer, feels in your hands longer. The space doesn't feel, you feel less space between the beats. That's going to naturally feel more rapid. Does that make sense? I know it's weird, but there are pulses that feel so. So I'm not always just taking how many beats per second they have. In evaluating, can I needle the abdomen or not? I'm also taking into account, does it feel slow to me? Does it have this sort of like, it's almost like there's a pause between the beats. Okay, that to me is slow, even if they were 70. You're not going to be able to feel a pause between beats if they're 90. So there's just not enough space there for that to happen. Physically, there's no, time-wise, it's not how possible. But in a sort of moderate pulse, it can lean towards slow or rapid, depending on the quality of the pause in between. Okay, so as long as the person has what I would feel not slow pulse, I'm willing to needle REN4, personally. Now, other points for tachycardia are under the second toe on the left side, okay, and liver 1 is a very good point for tachycardia. In fact, I would say if somebody has a slow pulse, do not bother using liver 1. In other words, if you wanted to use liver 1 for liver, don't do it for it. Think about it twice before you do it. with someone with liver issues and slow pulse. Because it's a point that's better for rapid pulse. All the Jing Well type points are better for rapid pulse.
And would you mox a liver one, or you need it?
Either one,
Not
it's the
always.
stimulation of it that's the issue. So,
It also gets confused if they're taking something like a beta blocker or something, because you feel, sometimes you feel the pulse is reasonable, but it feels as though it wants to be going,
yeah,
there's a
so
certain
that's,
agitation.
yeah, I mean, and then again, you're gonna have to calculate whether, so sometimes if you don't have clarity about, take what you feel, and if you don't have clarity, just, what happens is that we make the excuse of, oh, they're taking this medication that's masking. With masking, it's creating a certain quality, but that's the quality that's there. Deal with that quality, work with the quality that's there. Unless you happen to be one of those extraordinary people who really can say, this is the exact effect of this medication. Now, people who can take a pulse and can tell you what medications you're on. Okay, and there's what, 20 of those in the world? You know, it's like that doesn't apply to us. So I'm going to suggest, because this thing that we all say that the medication is doing something to the pulse, well, yeah, but since we can't say exactly what it is and what the pulse would be without it, work with what you have. And work with what you're not sure of. Yes, I'm sure. Yeah. Yes, absolutely.
I remember you saying, to make sure that I've got it right,
Yes.
that it is slow pulse when you can't use REM4, but you maybe use Mushu instead?
If you wanted to use REN4 and the pulse is slow, use Mushu instead. Yes, absolutely. Yes.
And then do you focus on the back? What would you do on the...
Yes, but we were talking about tachycardia, so it wouldn't have really. But, so on the back, for cardiac issues, on the back you do UB27 or sacral iliac ligaments and do 2. So you can, it's not uncommon, I wouldn't say it's 100% like that, but it's quite common for people with slow pulse to, number one, not show you a lot of findings in the abdomen. They're just not going to have a lot of findings in the abdomens, the person with the slow pulse. And that the front treatment may not be the major issue for them.
So you might do the back.
That's not what I would do the back. I still do the front, but I know that I have to, that I may not get great results until I do the back.
With all slow pulses?
With slow pulse. There's a possibility that would be the case. It's fairly common for those people.
And some people with the heart problem and they have shortness of breath, like when they're walking and things like that, and they say heart is going and I can't really take in their breath. And would that be the similar sort of things would you try?
I would look at, first of all, because what you're describing to me sounds more like COPD, which means I would treat the lungs. See, this is a situation where you have to kind of like decide, can you treat the heart or do you need to treat something else first? I would say this is a situation I would rather treat the lungs first. By first, I mean in this treatment. It's not like first for 3 months and then we can do the heart. Because if they're short of breath, I would rather either open up the diaphragm or treat the lungs so that they can breathe. Because if you treat the heart, against an inability to breathe, you're going to make the heart condition worse. I'll explain that to you. This is okay. You cannot treat the heart against, for example, edema. If you're making the heart strong, you're trying to make the heart stronger, but they have edema. You're making the heart pump against something it can't pump against. So you have to move the water first, give the heart some space to operate with, before you treat the heart itself. That's why if somebody has edema in the legs, we use spleen 3, 7, 11 first. Then we treat the cardiac. Okay.
In the same treatment?
In the same treatment.
Yeah.
As long as the water started moving, there's some movement, you don't want to push the heart against the same block that it had before.
Yeah.
If somebody is very blood deficient, and you're trying to make the heart pump, but that it's now pumping the opposite of edema, it's pumping it against a vacuum, you're only going to exhaust this poor heart. There's no point in doing it. So you have to build up some blood, or give the illusion of building up the blood, because it's not going to build up in 3 minutes, you know. But, you know, so you're doing spleen 6 in pericardium, or spleen 6 and 9 in pericardium, and then you're doing your cardiac.
Yeah.
If they have COPD and you want to treat the heart, you've got to open up the chest, the diaphragm, the lungs first, because what you're doing is you're pumping the heart against the chest that's closed. So again, you're basically exhausting the heart muscle. It's not wise to do it. So treat the lung, either lung 4, or maybe lung 5, or maybe lung 4, or whatever. Get the breath a little bit looser. It only needs to be, you know, like, you don't have to get 100%, but you can just get a little bit of movement in the breath, a little bit of improvement. Then you can start pushing the heart a little bit. Then the breath gets better. The heart gets, you know, but don't start with the heart against an obstacle.
Okay, so this person, sorry, just very quickly,
Yes, yes.
this person has got the huge, not what she's got pancreatic cancer, and then she's got blood clots in,
She has what?
blood clots.
Blood clots.
Yeah, and she's just shooting the blood cells. So around here, she says she's pointing, so she can't really feel like you're taking, so there's an obstruction.
Okay,
here,
so yeah,
and
so
then
we're talking about something
edema-
totally different. Okay, we're talking about.
Edema's building as well.
Okay. Okay, now we're talking about something totally different than COPD style.
Yeah.
So, you know, so this is why always look at the medical history of the root and prioritize. Somebody who comes and says, I have pancreatic cancer, chances are, this is like the absolutely most critical issue and most central issue that's happening. Because once they have pancreatic cancer, it suggests that nothing else is going to move in the body because there's no enzymatic action. So food gets stuck, you know, like blah, 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 blah. So for pancreatic issues, your treatment is basically spleen 5, because it's anti-inflammatory, okay? Adrenal, because the way you treat pancreatic inflammation is by giving prednisone. Now, it's cancer, granted, it's a little different, but so you're using kidney 6 and kidney 27, plus in this case you'll support it with lung 5, because lung is mother of kidney, okay? Metal is mother of water, okay? So it's a support. Then you add cancer points, which is inner renal liver 9. Any cancer, use liver, inner renal liver 9. And then always check the liver and treat the liver. She's already on blood thinners, so chances are, by theory, she's supposed to be liver 1 type, if she's on Coumadin or an equivalent. She's supposed to be a liver 1 style. But she may not be. But treat the liver. Any cancer, treat the liver. Any cancer, check the thyroid, check the liver. Okay? So the dogma on cancer is, yes, inner yin or liver 9 as the cancer point, supposedly, but, and also, by the way, under the second toe, both left and right in this case.
That's the cardiac one, so is that...
The cardiac one on the left, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Is on the left, but the one on the right is not cardiac. The left and right, both are cancer. Those are your cancer things, but the thing about cancer is you need to, quote-unquote, clear toxins. So always address the liver, whether you address it as a toxicity, as in like kidney 9 and large intestine 15. Do you address it because as a liver deficiency with liver 1 in this case because she has, you know, she's on blood thinners. These are choices. Then, and only then, start looking at what else is left or what else I need to do. But I would not. So yes, she has a cardiac issue that is the result of toxicity accumulating in her body, not allowing the blood to move. It's not like she has a cardiac issue that is causing other things. Who's causing the cardiac? In all likelihood, it's the edema. It's the accumulation of all these toxins from the cancers, all these blockages from the cancer. The blood can't move. Therefore, the heart is now pumping against too much. Therefore, now the heart becomes did you say tachycardia in this case?
Tachycardia, just because she can't really do all the other things, it's as a knock-on effect. So
Yeah.
I wasn't really looking at it as a big picture of a heart problem, say.
Yeah.
But,
I would say in a case like this, the likelihood is that the cardiac is it's not secondary because that might be what kills her, granted, but it's secondary in terms of cause and effect.
Yeah.
You know, that this, you need to clear other things for her.
Yeah.
Primarily clear out the liver, clear out what you can with the pancreas, which may not, clear the edema, then start looking at, you know, so when, and then when I say then, meaning like step by step in the same treatment, this all takes 10 minutes or less. Okay? Sure, yes.
One last thing, you said under second toe. Could you just explain the difference between under second toe and under third toe?
Okay, under the third toe is autonomic nervous system, has to do with blood pressure. Under the second toe is related to, it is cancer and or on the left side for tachycardia. In general, the points on the toes or under the toes are better for people with rapid heart rate, and I really look at them twice before I use them with someone with a slow pulse. I'm not that inclined to do liver one on someone with a clearly slow pulse. So I have to have really good, it has to really knock out lots of reflexes and be so clearly the right point for them. Under the third toe, the so-called rule is, if they have slow pulse, but they clearly have what we call a tight pulse, meaning thin with a wiry quality, but not excess wiry, and disappears or changes texture upon pressure, you're allowed to do under the third toe, even though the pulse is slow. But if the pulse does not have that quality of thin, wiry, disappears or changes quality of pressure, you avoid under the third toe. Okay? Whereas rapid pulse, you can just use under the third toe no matter what kind of pulse they have. Because points at the bottom of the feet, at the end of the very extremity of the foot, tend to be points that increase, that are good for rapid heartbeat, not for slow.
So that include the Dre points?
No, because that's already not the extremity. They're above the digits. They're here. They're like the shoe points. As far as I'm concerned, the joy points are the shoe points on the other side of the foot. So that will be my description of it.
So the cancer points are the second toe, both sides?
Yes.
And
inner yin, or liver nine.
And inner yin. And left-hand side, tachycardia, second toe?
Yes, exactly.
Thank you.
And you do those even if the pulse is slow?
Sorry?
The second toe underneath.
The second toe, if it's cancer, I would do it if the pulse is slow and if it seems to, unless there is something that screams and says, oh, don't. It's, to be honest with you, cancer does not often come with a slow pulse. Certainly not pancreatic cancer, because usually they're discovered pretty late. Early stages cancer may still have more slow pulse.
On the cardiac person with a slow pulse, that isn't the ANS pulse, instead of under the third toe, we do.
Okay, cardiac that has a slow pulse, instead of a no autonomic nervous system pulse, and you want to do the under the third toe because of blood pressure, let's say, or because they're pissing me off.
If the blood pressure is low.
The blood pressure is low. Okay, blood pressure is low and the pulse is low. But the pulse is not tight, is not that quality. No, then just use spleen 6, spleen 9, pericardium. I would avoid under the third toe. If the pulse is very clearly slow and, say it's a slippery pulse. Slippery pulse is about as opposite as you can get from a tight pulse.
I'm thinking of somebody who, if you know anything about Shanghana pulses, the hesitant wave where it's just a pinprick.
Okay.
That kind of pulse.
That kind of pulse can still be, tight because that pinprick, okay, so it doesn't have enough
It
length.
doesn't have any kind of wave to it, it's just So,
okay, that pulse, I would start looking at stomach chi.
Okay.
The first association I have with a pulse that just hits up and has no wave whatsoever, that's a stomach, that's what Nagano defined as a pulse that has no stomach chi. You know, the pulse is supposed to have depth, shen, and stomach chi. And nobody defines what stomach chi is. Nagano defined lack of stomach chi as meaning that thing and treat it with the points between stomach 36 and stomach 41 that are the bumps, where you have bumps of the thing. I'll see if something else with that. But it can still, that pulse, because, okay, that's a prick that you feel coming into your finger, you feel like this thing, even though it doesn't have length, so you can't define it as stringy, it can still, if it disappears on pressure, when you press the pulse down and you no longer feel that, but suddenly you do feel a little bit of a wave, or you feel nothing, that I would still be willing to, personally to define as tight, because it's tight without length. If that makes sense. Hi, sorry, come on in. You are now the star of the show.
I think at
Yes.
some point,
Sorry. Yeah, so tell us why you're here.
I'm Hayley, so I'm here today to be a patient. That could be whatever you want.
You can invent diseases, you can make them up.
So in terms of, I'm sort of pre-menopausal.
Premenopausal, okay.
Sort of just going into it.
Okay.
And suffer terribly from bloating.
Okay, so digestive bloating. Okay. Have you eliminated any foods?
Fruit at the moment, so we've been through carbs, and it's not carbs, so it appears to be sort of citric fruits.
Citric fruits seem to be doing good. Okay, all right. What's in your history? So if you're premenopausal, you're in your late 40s, maybe 50?
No, early 40s.
Early 40, okay. And
A family history of starting early from about 35.
Okay. And any other medical history in your family or in yourself?
No, as a child I suffered badly from whooping cough.
Okay.
And everything's been ENT related.
Has been what?
ENT related.
So you've had a lot of problems with your throat, nose, ears?
Yes, yeah.
So you've had lots of ear infections as a child?
Lots of ear infections, had a mastoidectomy.
Oh, okay. Sometimes you have to pull things out of people. The mastoids were removed. Okay, that's a big... Not tonsils?
No.
The tonsils, you still have your tonsils?
No, they were
tonsils.
removed.
Okay, because usually they'll remove the tonsils first and then they'll remove the
Yes, so they removed the tonsils twice for the regrowth.
They regrew. Okay, you've insisted. Like, I want those damn tonsils. All right. So that puts her very clearly in an immune category. There's no question about it. But the mastoid also puts her in an extra category of, of a liver 13 possibility. All right. Do you still suffer from, say, hay fever or,
Never suffered from hay fever.
Never. Okay. Or ear infections as a child. What else as a child?
It was just literally ear infections and whooping cough. So up until about 15, I still had, when I coughed, I still had a barking, whooping cough style cough.
Yeah, okay. And since age 15, you've not been coughing so much?
No, I would get it routinely as a normal cold. And I went through a period in my 30s of having lots of colds. So as soon as I recovered from one, I went straight into another one, had a period of acupuncture, and that sort of cured it for about 3 years. And now I'm just slowly seeing them come back again.
Okay. And your early menopause signs are... Okay, and when did the bloating start?
For about past 3 years.
3 years. When did the menopause start?
We think about the same time.
Okay, we think. Okay.
Yeah. Because cycles have been erratic.
I understand. Any other signs of menopause, like hot flashes, dryness, anything else? Or just
Hot
the period?
flushes occasionally,
Occasionally.
but manageable through the night.
Okay.
But typically I'm a cold person. I feel
Okay.
cold really easily.
All right. Anything else?
No.
Any questions?
Mum and Dad's health, was that?
Sorry.
Your mother and father's health, is it?
Both good. Yeah, no problems with heart disease or anything, so good.
No diabetes?
No diabetes.
Okay. Now, your periods up to 3 years ago were regular
Yes, to the day.
to the day, 28 days?
Yeah,
Okay. Were you on a pill ever?
yes. From
Okay.
about the age of 20.
Till the age of 20
No,
or since?
from the age of 20.
Until what age?
Until I had my son who's 11, so about 11 years. 11, 12 years.
Okay, and then, so then, after you had your son for the next 7 years, until problems, until things started, the periods were still regular?
Still regular, yeah.
Okay, all right.
But
Did
very short in cycle, so no longer than 48 hours.
Of bleeding? Gotcha. All right. No problems getting pregnant?
Nope.
Okay, let's put you on the table to see what we can do. So, you feel, yes, please. The bloating is here or the bloating is here?
There.
Okay. When I press, is that uncomfortable?
Yes.
Okay. She says, yes, with her eyes light up. So it's like it almost feels like, yes, please do it again. It's so comfortable. I'm not sure how to remove that, if you don't mind. Definitely not an autonomic nervous system boss, I can tell you that much.
So it doesn't disappear when you press it?
Well, it isn't tight enough. It has, I wouldn't call it quite slippery, but it's definitely not. It doesn't have that thin to it, so we can eliminate that. What is your blood pressure?
It tends to be on the low side.
It tends to be low. Okay. So notice how many people have a tendency towards low, and no one cares. And yet, she has bloating, which means that the small intestine is not absorbing food quite correctly, which is somewhat related. And yes, you could say it's all enzymes, but but still, you need blood pressure in order to absorb food. So if the food is not being absorbed across the wall of the small intestine, what's going to happen? There's going to be some bloating. So there's possibility that the low blood pressure is related. All right. So this is uncomfortable.
No, not now.
Oh.
Interestingly. Can't feel anything now.
All right. So when I poke here, you just feel my fingers?
Feel them, yeah.
Okay. I mean, in other words, it doesn't feel horribly,
No.
uncomfortable. If anything that when I press does not feel like that, so now you know what my fingers feel.
Okay.
When I'm going to press around the abdomen, tell me if things feel different. It doesn't have to be pain, just different. Okay? So here.
There.
There is something, okay. So right stomach 26, 27, which can be a digestive reflex, okay? It can be lung reflex, digestion reflex, immune reflex. She has immunity, she has digestion, she has two things that qualify. She also has another, it could be a pelvic shift, which I don't know if she has. And the other thing is she can have, that it can represent is what we call kidney regeneration capacity. Which she has. I mean, this is in menopause, that's when the kidney, so this is actually quite a popular finding nowadays. I can tell you that 25, 30 years ago, right stomach 25, 26, 27 was not very popular finding. Left stomach 26, 27 was popular. In the last 10 years, right side stomach 26, 27 is popular, and a lot of it is not to do with digestion or lung or immunity. A lot of it has to do with, it's primarily women. It's often women who have, is this uncomfortable? They'll have kidney 2 pressure pain on the right side. No. and compare it with this side.
I can feel it more on the
Okay, so she can feel more kidney 2 on this side. So check. You know, it's not everybody says pain. You know, so it's a question of personality. So it's a very common finding. Right kidney 2 and right stomach 26, 27. It's something, some capacity of. It often has to do with, say, fertility or reproductive system, but it's the ability of the kidney to regenerate, to create, because the kidney is. You know, if you think about it in terms of phases, okay, it's water that is going to move into wood, meaning death that is going to move into new life, which exists at every moment.
Would this
It's not
explain?
like, you know, reincarnation. Yeah, go on.
My apologies, teacher.
Yes, I need to.
Yes, well, I do need to wash my ears, there's no doubt about that. Would this be the reason, maybe, for the tonsils regrowing? Am I thinking on the right
That
lines?
she spent too much of her kidney regeneration on the damn tonsils, and now she's got not enough left.
Well, the regeneration of the kidney capacity
Yeah,
causing
it's
tonsils to.
interesting. I didn't think about it that way, but maybe, I don't know. But there's something right now in, you know, because of menopause, the kidney's regeneration, ability to regenerate is not as good. So I believe that's related to why she regrew her tonsils, I don't know.
Could it be people who skip their periods? Would that be an issue? As in missing a month?
I mean,
kind of
you know,
thing?
I mean, if you can, you know, I mean, anything can happen. I mean, I don't have like a clear explanation of that. I'm just saying it's an extremely common pattern. Kidney 2 and right side stomach 26, 27, and that's not going to get fixed by spleen 9, like the appendectomy type person, or by immune point, which she happens to be the type. So, you know, so let's just do this so we can prove that. Yes, it will also fix this in all likelihood. So you have a little bit of here, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when I press here,
I can feel it, yeah.
forget the arm. How is the abdomen?
Okay.
Yeah. So yes, the immune fixes it. My question is, because she has other symptoms, I want to make sure. So for example, right? When I press on the leg here, I'm sorry, how is the abdomen?
Fine.
Okay, also fine. So kidney 7. Sorry, kidney 7. So, because she had kidney 2 pain. So, I need to, just because one, so you see, if I was going to play the game of, this belongs in immune, therefore I do immune point, and then I'm done, I didn't get the chance of checking that kidney 7 is useful. That's why I check everything first. Okay, so you can build your strategy. Okay, so, all right, now, how about here, below kidney 16, and 8 o'clock? You're thinking about it, you don't need it. How about REN 9?
Yes.
Yes, and she also has a REN 9 pulse, very clear. Okay. How about REN 10?
No.
But I think REN 12,
No.
no, okay, that was 12, and then I checked below, it's 10, sorry, that was wrong. Here,
No.
or here? How about here? Or here, stomach 21. I'm just checking everything to do with digestion because I'm not sure if the bloating, even though she said bloating is below the navel, which suggests that it's small intestine and lower, I still want to check. So chances are it's not related to liver, pancreas, etc. I just want to make sure. Compare right side and left side. I think they feel the same?
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. And here?
Right side more than
The
left.
right side, yeah. I can feel a little tightness on under the ribs, but she doesn't feel it. So but she does feel this. Okay. So up to now, what we found a little bit here, and this guy, and this guy. Correct? Okay. Let's check ovary and uterus. So kidney 13, stomach 28, kidney 13, stomach 28. All fine. Okay. Good. Anything on REN 17?
No.
And REN 15? No. All right. So let's go to your relax. You don't have to give me anything. 1, 2, 3. Anything?
No.
Okay. 1, 2, 3.
No.
Nothing on 2?
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Slightly more than.
Slightly. Okay. Now, I still need to get more involved with you know, whatever it is behind the ear, Sanjaya 17?
Yeah.
Okay, but let me just do the neck in general. The cervicals, 2, 3, 4.
I can feel those, yes.
All of them, okay. How about the occiput, 2, 3, 4?
No.
Okay. And, oh, yes, there's a missing mastoid here. There isn't much of anything here where the mastoid would have been.
I can feel
You
it,
can
yeah.
feel not so comfortable,
Yeah.
okay. And how about Sanjaya 17 here?
No, fine.
Okay. It's, when I press under the ear here, it's very soft. It's almost like I'm feeling, wow, I better stop or else I'll reach into the brain. It's, you know, so, but the mastoid itself is unhappy right here.
Mhm.
How about Sanjaya 16?
I can feel that,
Okay,
yes.
so Sanjaya 16 immune and mastoid, okay? Now, cervicals 2, 3, 4,
3 and 4, okay.
3 and 4, whereas left side was all 4 of them. And how about the occiput 2, 3, 4?
No.
No,
Fine.
okay. And Sanjaya 17,
Okay.
okay. And 16,
No.
no, okay. And here, the
I
mastoid.
can feel something there.
So the mastoid both sides, and Sanjaya 16 they're all only on the left side for some reason. Okay. You feel bloated right now?
I'm not, yes I do actually, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, so we have something to test against. Any disc, oh. You have the, you know, the thickening of the skin here, right? Do you,
Yeah.
You treat it, because it seems like you treat it a little easier on this side. Can you reach better here or something?
Must be able to.
Okay. No, so her spleen channel, what do you call this, the thickening of the skin that you use? Callus. Yeah, she's quite calloused on the spleen channel. Any discomfort here on spleen 2 or here?
No.
Okay. So, you had discomfort here,
Mm-hmm.
and a little bit here. And then on this side you had 1, 2, 3, and 4, correct?
Yeah.
And you also had here
Yeah.
and here.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's start with this one.
So is that the one?
Sorry?
What are you holding in your foot?
I'm looking, it's actually the callus,
Oh, is that right?
because there's a disruption in the spleen channel. Okay. How is this guy now?
Better?
By how much?
A lot?
A lot, okay. And you had here,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not pressing on the callus. How is Sanjaya 16?
Much better.
Much better, okay. How is this guy above the navel?
Okay, yeah.
It's okay. And how is this guy?
Yeah.
Okay, good. All right. Let me see. You had, let me see if I can get them from this position. 3 and 4, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I'm now pressing on the callus. How is 3 and how is 4?
I can still feel 4.
Okay, and is it any better at all?
It is much better.
Okay, so it suggests that I'm looking for the spleen. I would have gone for, I really wanted to just check spleen too, but then she had calluses. So it kind of solves my problem of what spleen point to use. You know, basically use the calluses. Now, I need to confirm on this side where my callus to use. Oh, how's this?
I can feel it, but it's not as uncomfortable.
Okay, so this, okay, so we'll have another option. And how is this?
Okay.
Okay. And you had, I believe, it's here,
Mm-hmm.
here. How is it?
Much better, but I can still feel it.
Okay, alright. So it doesn't, we don't have to this doesn't have to solve everything, you know, but it seems to, it's clear that it does something useful. Alright, so let's start.
Do you mind me touching
No,
your
that's
That's open house, you realise.
yes, no, it's fine.
House on the toes.
It's all right stuff.
Definitely in the next time, isn't it?
Okay, I'm going to do those at the end, don't worry, it's still touch.
It's repressing here.
Kidney 7, yeah.
Repressing
I
here.
would, yeah, I was on this callus. There is a callus here, but I chose this one. Why? Because it's closer to the tray. So I like that. So kidney 7, because I tested that kidney 7 was helping in terms of the right side stomach 26, 27, and when I first asked her, why are you here, she said, well, I have premenopausal, so that makes sense to, do like menopausal treatment. Okay, and you have here, right?
Mm-hmm.
How's Tara? So the thought for menopause is very similar to TCM, yes, tonifying the kidney. So I'm doing adrenal treatment, so in this case it's kidney 7 plus 27. So we have this big concept called adrenal, which usually shows below kidney 16. Okay? And originally we used kidney 6 and 27, but we can use any kidney point below the knee. Okay? Because she has kidney 2 pain, I prefer kidney 7. Okay? Because it's the metal point. Metal water overcomes fire. She didn't have a huge amount on kidney 2, and second I'll check it. And kidney 27 needle towards the center.
But you're not putting in the 10. It's not 7.
Hold on in a second.
Oh, sorry.
No, because she didn't have like real kidney 10, blah, blah, So what I'm going to do is I'm going to now check and see, because originally you didn't even think this was a problem until I said compare.
Yes.
So now, if I compare left and right, are they more similar now?
They are, but I can still feel
There's still a
right
difference. Okay, so now, if I can avoid 10, I do. No, not because there's anything wrong with 10, but just because if I can get away with just 7, there are many cases you can get away with just 7. That's the... Okay, so, how's the difference now?
The same.
They are the same.
They are the same.
It's
yeah.
not the difference is the same, okay. Communication is very important. So now I'm adding 10. All right. Now, how much is left on this guy?
Okay.
It's okay?
Yeah, it's much better.
Okay. And interestingly enough, even the pulse is gone. And as you well know, Ren9 pulse does not go away easily. So she has one big advantage. Things move for her easily, for whatever reason. But I will add musha, which is the point I would normally use for Ren9 pulse. My preference, there are other dogmas for Ren9 pulse. I have found that musha does the best job. The official dogma for Ren9 pulse is right side stomach 24. Okay. In my opinion, I could say it doesn't do anything. That would be a little bit unfair. It does very little. It just doesn't do it enough. And I mean, most people I talk to say the same thing, that it's very nice, it's a lovely idea, it just doesn't seem to do it. The other thing is, I will say, so the right stomach 24 for Ren9 pulse, by the way, they're so close, like, maybe we're missing some weird thing. That ideology came before Ren9 pulse became so common in people. That came in the 90s, and Nagano said, so stomach 24 is called the slippery flesh gate, Wayomen, and you have a slippery flesh here with a pulse. So that was the idea. But it was so rare to see someone with a pulse at Ren9 at that time. Pulsing in Ren9 became dominant in the last 10 years, or a little bit more maybe, say since 2008. It was not common before. Just like Oketsu was very common in the 90s and disappeared in the 2000s. What replaced this was adrenal. Adrenal became the big deal. Now, after that, we are actually not seeing so much adrenal, we're seeing more red-9 pulses, and actually those are beginning to disappear also, relative, as far as fashions. So there's fashions in what people come with, not because they read the right books, and said, I think I'll take this abdomen today, but because the conditions of the culture are such that are encouraging certain phenomena, so we can't always tell what that's going to mean. So.
I understand that cultural change with say the adrenal and with Ketsu, but I thought the red-9 pulse was far more to do with Jing and the development of the embryo. Is it not?
No.
Is it not the embryonic tissue that allows you to
It
feel?
can have to do with allergies, and yes, it can. There's a connection between the navel and connection to mother, and therefore ancestry, and therefore genetics, etc. You can make that. But the pulse at red-9, no, it's a weakness. It's a weakness of the mesentery, of the tissue that covers the small intestine, because the pulse really comes from fairly close to the spine. And while she's thin, look, this finger is now touching the table, and my wrist is about level with her navel. So there's this much space, or this much space between where the pulse is in front of the spine and the navel. So if there's a weakness, if the tissue is weak, you're going to feel the pulse. If the tissue has better tone, you're not going to feel the pulse.
I think that's where my question was. What causes the tissue to be weak as a race now for us?
Right, how come I'm not total. You can make up a lot of. This is where the explanation may come in 10 years when we see a little bit more of maybe we understand. You can say it could be something has to do with the small intestine. So it may have to do with we are now the third or fourth generation of processed foods, maybe. Okay. It could have to do, no, it's also, don't forget, it's blood vessels nonetheless, so it has to do, it could be some sort of fear that as a race we experience, which we can see, because then it gets into politics, but I think we can clearly see that as a human race we are experiencing fear, and there's a discomfort with who we are, which is why everything gets so extreme. We're starting to try to protect ourselves in whatever manner we can. There's a certain lack of trust going on in the world. Generally, people don't trust that they have a future and that they know what this future is. So, because remember, this pulsation ultimately, when you're feeling a pulse, you're feeling blood, the blood holds the Shen. So you're feeling a variation of the Shen also. You can't, so there is the physicality of, there's the tissue, but there's also, ultimately, it's a pulse. Which means what you're feeling is Shen.
Thank you.
It's not settled. Alright, and then let's do your...
And that's why it's the sadness reflex, is it? Because of the...
Well, sadness reflex was a pressure pain, not necessarily...
So it's just Mushu every treatment, you don't have anything else?
Yeah, in this case, for the red-9, it's not so much the upright thing, it's more the squeezing for consolidation. Same idea of coming from the side to create strength in the lower abdomen. Not for, nothing to do necessarily with a chai with the legs. So, are you still a smoker?
Me? Yeah.
Do you still have a lighter? Is really the question. I really
yes is the answer. Just,
I really don't care if you smoke. I only care if you have a lighter.
If you can, I class myself as a non-smoker, really.
Oh, okay. A non-smoker with a lighter.
The old roller here and there, I don't think. Have you got a lighter?
Is there a non-smoker that has a lighter?
Yeah.
You're a rolling horse.
And he's got it for taking stones out of causes for use. Andy had one for taking stones out of horses'
Oh, I've got one of those.
Stones out of
Oh, you don't know? Well, you know, the joke was he always had a Swiss Army knife and it had a thing that would take stones out of, and everybody carried.
Oh, everybody should have one.
Everybody had carried one. And Swiss Army knives were
Oh.
the thing
Well.
in Europe anyway.
Okay.
They were all too young.
No, we're not all too young. I have one.
You understand?
I don't think I like
I got stolen in America.
California.
It meant that, you know, some people just sort of like when you're seeing breathing, it's like in your tummy.
Sorry,
That,
start again.
when you're breathing in your
Yeah.
tummy, like some people just
Oh, it quivers.
Yeah, quivers.
They
yes,
quiver
yes.
and the red-9 pulse are highly correlated.
Right. Okay.
That-
So
that's
still,
all.
you
So
would
some
just
people
treat.
you can already see the pulse before, you know, before
Yeah.
anything happens because you can. Oops.
This is not.
Do you want
No,
to
no,
put,
no, this is not.
the
That's
green,
just a
sorry.
burn
Oh,
print.
okay.
Yeah, that's
did you want to put an immune over here as well?
Oh, shoot. Yeah, sorry, I didn't realize it.
Kathy, if you feel a
Yeah.
red-9 pulse
It's
and
called
somebody was do you still take notice?
Yes, of course. It doesn't. However thin they are,
Yeah, if you feel
there's
it.
too much space.
I don't need an explanation, I just need
Yeah, yeah, okay.
That's fine. You just lead up.
It's fine. Do you ever ignore it? Because
Stick and swallow it, and then he's on it.
Yeah.
Squeezing and I just.
And used the bloating was higher up under the ribs.
Sorry?
Bloating was higher up.
Then I would say it's more
Yes.
upper GI
Yes.
than small
This is-
intestine.
it's
Okay,
more-
one more thing
It's
to
not
check.
the same.
I just want to make sure that we got everything.
It's not the same.
That's gone?
Chinese.
No, actually.
No? Oh, okay, okay, good. So there's still here, and how about this guy?
No, I can feel that as well.
Okay. So. How about now
Better.
and now?
Yeah.
How much is left?
A little bit.
A little bit, compare. So I'm testing small intestine 1, now I'll test small intestine 3. How's now?
Yeah, much better.
Much better? And this guy?
Much better.
Okay. So
Small intestine 3.
it can be it will either be small intestine 1 and 2 or small intestine 3. And here's, hold on, I'll get you the
So are you
result.
going to channel?
Sorry?
Are you thinking what channel?
Okay, remember yesterday I told you about small intestine 2 and 3 are a before and after,
Yeah.
and it relates to, can be related to before and after. Around do 20 you have to do 19 and do 19 and do 21 that are before and after the vertex. This before and after, after the creek and before the, I have to look it up exactly what it means. But, and I told you, like in large intestine you also have the second space and the third space. It looks like in the small intestine and large intestine channel, they're suggesting that the first 3 points are related to the different sections of the organ. So bloating generally is a small intestine thing, because it can be related more to upper GI and maybe more even, if anything, to the pancreas. Because anything else that's, would be more like heartburn. May still give you a feeling of fullness, but if it relates to the stomach and up, it's not exactly bloating. So bloating is generally either small intestine or large intestine. Okay? So, in order to try to affect it, it seems like, so either because the first 3 points seem to be related to the 3 sections of the intestines, yes, you can just do small intestine 1 or just small intestine 2 or just small intestine 3, but I would tend to do either small intestine 3 or small intestine 1 and 2 together.
Okay. Yeah.
So when I tested, small intestine 1 did something, but small intestine 3 did a better job. Okay, and it did not do the other side, so. Anything left on this one?
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit, and how about this one?
Yeah.
Okay, so just a little bit on this one, so let's start with 3.
No, gone.
Gone, okay.
So I have a chap, Paddy, who has horrendous heartburn, and he's on PPIs and has been for ages, but it seems like that was the initial thing, and then it's gone to this horrendous bloating, which feels more like small intestine lower, but I
Well, what
suspect
happens
it's-
is with these heartburn medications, the stomach acid gets weaker and weaker and weaker, and then the small intestine has to work harder and harder and harder, and then it ends up that, then he does have, he is going to have a small, an actual digestive problem, whereas before what he had, chances are he may not have had a stomach acid problem to begin with. He may have had weak stomach acid to begin with.
Yeah.
And now they're weakening it further and further and further constantly, and then, so it's hard to know. But if his, basically that they're creating a situation where the stomach is not going to work properly. Sorry. So you're creating a situation where the stomach is not going to be working properly, and then the small intestine has to work harder, and then eventually the small intestine starts to, quote unquote, give in.
Yeah.
So
he's definitely like that. And also he gets a lot of pain, and I was always thinking it might be a valve. And I don't know how to do valves.
you're not a plumber, you don't do valves.
Well, he's read a lot as well, and he's read about.
But that's a lot.
Well, no, the stomach,
further up,
stomach
stomach
to the
to
small
the
intestine and that, and he
it's
also
hard
has.
to know if it's a valve. Well, okay. So if you think it's a valve, look at Sancho 8. If you're looking for a
He's
point that
massively
responds to
ANS as well.
valve, I would say Sancho 8, possibly Spleen 3. But if you're looking at, is it? But it could be just inflammation. Is pain can be from just things that are inflamed.
Yeah,
So it's just hard to know.
it is hard to know.
And that would be then immune point. Would that be your first point of call for information?
For inflammation, no. Stomach 41. Or, depending on location, or like anti-inflammatory, like spleen 5. Liver 5 in this case would not apply because it's too high for liver 5.
Is that the anti-inflammatory stomach 41?
Stomach 41, but okay, so if you take stomach 41 here, it's structural, but if you take stomach 41 here, more towards gallbladder, it's considered anti-inflammatory.
For digestive system?
For in general.
In general.
anti-inflammatory.
And these guys, I didn't know the difference between sort of this moxa and the moxa that they use in
Okay.
Chinese medicine.
So, this is not moxa in terms, if you're trying to compare it with a moxa stick, this is direct moxa, and especially this because you see how it's yellow, it's not green, okay? This is the wool that grows over the leaves of the Artemisia vulgaris. What you're getting in the sticks or what you're getting in the brown stuff is basically they take the leaves, the twigs, as well as the wool, and they just grind it all together and they create the stick or the moxa out of it. This, they do the same thing except they put it in a centrifuge, so the lighter stuff gets thrown furthest away, and then you collect the wool. It's very light and very fluffy, and it's not warm. It's warm, but it's not hot. Okay? So, this you don't have a problem. You can do this in conditions that TCM would call heat conditions, and you can still do moxa. Okay? And what's important when I do this is that I'm not compacting the moxa stays light, fluffy. And it's just a way of stimulating points a little extra. So are you feeling like little mosquito bites or you haven't felt anything yet?
Haven't felt anything.
Okay. Just means I have to do more of these.
So if anybody wants to have a scientific something, because the patients always ask me, so, what is this herbs doing? Because I said, well, this is a mugwort. So what does mugwort do? Does the mugwort do something, or just that fineness of the hair does?
I think the mugwort itself in the Chinese materia medica, aye, is a warming herb. But this is not aye, this is not mugwort. This is like the woolly thing that's over it. So I don't know what the Chinese don't even define it in the materia medica.
Okay.
So I don't know, but you can invent for them.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
This has. It's like, it resonates with the spleen because it's yellow.
Strengthening properties, that's what I say.
I went to
Very
see.
strengthening.
Strengthening. all I can do is, this is what I tell patients.
Yeah.
A needle breaks down connective tissue. Now, it doesn't mean that number one, that what I'm saying is true, and that doesn't even mean that what I'm saying makes sense to the patients, but this is what I tell them. The rest, is up to them. A needle breaks down the connective tissue. This dissolves the connective tissue. There is a difference in action between needle and moxa. Moxa is important in certain conditions. Lung and immune conditions, moxa is important. Very weak patients, I think moxa is important. Chronic kind of conditions, it's very important.
Yeah.
And then there's some points that we really like moxa on. So the Jing Well points, we like moxa on. Spleen 3, we like moxa on. Lung 8, we like moxa on. Liver 5 is only a moxa point, as far as I'm concerned. You can't even...
Lung 8.
I like...
Lung 8.
Surrounding small intestine meridian.
I like moxa on that. So there's certain places where I like moxa, but the truth is you can probably get away with never doing moxa in your practice and still get decent results. The moxa is going to increase your results. No question about it. Some people seem to love to do a huge amount of moxa, especially so people who see a lot of patients and see them very quickly. They like having an assistant who will do the moxa, and then that assistant also gets a chance to spend more time with the patient and be kind of easy, do more stuff with them. So, yeah, those people, so some people do 10 points moxa on every patient, every treatment, because they're not doing it, they have someone else do it. Okay, if you're doing it yourself, I think that figuring out 2 to 4 points to moxa for a patient is, for the most patients, is plenty, and many patients you can get away without any. Not every patient is chronic immune problems. So why do you have to push it? So if unless you like doing moxa and you really, so some people really, it's kind of enjoyable, but. No, it is. It's kind of meditation.
I most of my patients like it.
It relaxes me.
Yeah.
It's quite meditative.
Yeah,
Just
sit
a
down.
repetition.
And when I sit down,
Yeah.
have a chat now.
Yeah.
So but then if you did 8 points per patient with moxa, that would not be so relaxing maybe if you did that all day. So so if you're doing 2 to 4 on say half your patients, then it's comfortable. But there is a very strong movement within, especially the Western practitioners of Japanese acupuncture, to go moxa, moxa, moxa. It's very important. The most important thing is moxa, and then you have people who have different styles of doing direct moxa, and because there's a certain amount of skill involved with your hands, and like anything else, once you have a skill, you get very proud of the fact that you have it, and all these other people don't. I mean, it's like, look, I worked really hard. Do you know how hard I worked to make my moxa so small and so beautiful and so blah, 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 blah. And so it gets to be competitive, and we sometimes lose in the Japanese acupuncture world, in my opinion. People lose sight of what it's really about. It's not about making me look good. It's about making the patient get better. So we start overemphasizing how wonderful moxa is. Moxa is wonderful, yes. You can totally, I had a clinic partner who once said to me, why do you do all this moxa? And I said, well, I gave him the dogma. Oh, moxa is right. And he said, but look, when we go, we would go to health fairs or something, and I would treat it. He said, but they all get results without doing moxa, because you don't have time to do moxa there. And you just do needles, so what's there? And I started thinking, I started going crazy, you're right. It's like I'm doing this moxa because I have a thing in my head that says, but when you test it against reality, that was not necessarily true. So do I really need to do all this moxa? And who am I doing it for? Am I doing it for the patient, or am I doing it because it makes me feel like, oh, I'm a good practitioner, look at me, I'm doing moxa. So in her case, because, number one, because she's immune, and number two, because of the calluses, I kind of need the moxa.
I did calluses like this on my feet, Abby, when I first started into practice, and I didn't do it too much.
but then about a week later, all of it just came off. It was like it came
Oh,
off, and then
yeah.
the whole thing, the whole thick skin just all shed
Yeah,
off.
now
And I
you
thought,
won't need a
oh,
poo
blimey.
stone in a week.
Quite strong, yeah.
Isn't that lucky?
What
Yeah.
did you do? Moxa?
Yeah, I did what Abby did to this lady, because I thought, well, I've got some, and he said to practice doing it, do it on hard skin, because it's...
When you do mocks on yourself, when you practice on yourself, you know, it's an easy place. Doing it, say, on the center of the heel, like for insomnia, you know, doing it on the foot where there's thicker skin is kind of nicer, because, you know, the thicker skin protects you. So then, because at the beginning, you are bound to burn people. At the beginning, it's just accept in advance. So that's why you want to burn yourself. You know, you want some practice yourself. So if you are going to do it, this is what I do have a video on how to do moxa, and I think the next person's here. The big thing is make sure your hands are clean. Okay, so wipe your hands. When I say clean, I mean from your own sweat, because if you put the sweat into the moxa, then it burns a lot stronger. And you want the moxa light and fluffy, so I'm not pressing my hand, I'm just doing this, then I'm tearing off a little piece. So, and landing it on the patient. So the moxa should be fluffy, not tight. Tight moxa burns more strongly. Okay? So you really want it light and fluffy and no sweat. Those are the requirements. Okay? The rest, I mean, there are people, you'll see that it's, you know, people talk about, they take a piece of tissue paper and they burn 100 moxas, and the tissue paper should show no browning, no tearing, no nothing.
Oh, God, who's got time for that?
Exactly. That's my problem. You know, it's like, it sounds so cute, but it's like, do I really want to spend my whole life like practicing on a piece of tissue paper, burning 100 moxas, until I can have a tissue paper and then blow my nose on it without feeling like there was mox on it? Yeah, so I get that these people do beautiful moxa and stuff. I have never done it. I'm sure they think that I'm a barbarian, you know, doing this stuff. But it works, you know. And I hate to tell you, but I've seen some very good people do moxa in ways that are totally unacceptable in the pretty world, but nobody would say a word to them because they have a big name. So it's like, yeah, there's the official way of doing things, and you know, Japan has a very strong sense of aesthetics. You know, there's a way, and then we as Westerners tend to take that on. You know, thinking that this is not the essence, this is just the container. What's important is not what your cup looks like, but what you're drinking out of the cup, so to speak, you know what I mean? So yes, and to understand that in Japan, a lot of, my understanding, I'm not Japanese, so I don't want to impose, but I think a lot of these rules that we look at are built in order to get people, okay, so for example, if you're doing flower arranging in Japan, you want to become a master of flower arranging, I don't know, something like that. The first year, you're not even touching the flowers, you're just observing. The second year, you're allowed to maybe bring the flower, you're not allowed to cut them, you know, and it takes 7 or whatever number of years before you can actually allowed to do a flower arrangement, and now you're qualified as a master flower arranger. Now, I've talked to people and they've said, yes, that's absolutely true, but say I'm a master flower arranger and now I want to be a master trumpeter. Okay. There's no connection between the trumpets and the flowers. I think we can all agree. Suddenly, you only need 1 year of training to get your sensei or whatever of trumpets. How come? Okay. The training, all these rules are not meant because the flower or because it's about training your mind to you can say to submit your ego. It's about training your mind. Once your mind has been trained, all you need is the technique for the trumpet, for the blah blah, for the blah blah. But the mind already has this capacity of like, just do it, just do it, just do it, just do it. This is really pissing me off. Just fucking do it. He's really pissing me off. I want to cut the flowers. Just do it. This is what the training is about. It's training the mind through a technique. It's not training the technique. Okay? Since we as Westerners, especially as acupuncture practitioners, are not as interested in training our minds necessarily. That's, you know, if you are, that's fabulous, but you just want the results that are for the patient through the moxa. That's all you're asking. Okay? then you don't need it. Then just get the damn technique and train your mind in whatever manner you want. You know, so that's my understanding of why, and I think that sometimes people lose sight of what this is all about. You know, why do we do, the people who do the 100 moxas on the tissue, it's not that their moxa necessarily is so superior, it's they're training themselves in a discipline. You know, and that's fabulous, but I'm not sure that it affects their capacity to do moxa any better. You know, so it's totally up to you how you want to work with that.
Maybe?
Yes.
Oh, sorry, you've
No,
got a minute?
it's okay.
Okay. No, I just wanted to share something. I went for a workshop with Merlin Young a couple of years back, the guy who runs Moxa Africa, and he's treating TB and AIDS, AIDS because it often goes hand in hand with TB. And he said that, you know, various tests that have been done on Moxa show that there's well over 100 chemical residuals left in that yellow smoker's stain. He didn't comment upon the strength of them, but it's interesting, isn't it, that we've used the same substance for thousands of years. You know, there must be other things which will burn at slow combustion, but we still continue to use.
Yeah, I don't think it's, I would say, okay, it's not just the heat, you know, because if you say, for example, if you use a tiger warmer,
Yeah.
you're not getting the same results. There's no question that it's different. And by the way, notice that this guy is using moxa on the conditions that it's very clearly related: lung conditions, immune conditions, chronic conditions.
Yes.
You know, he's not saying, I go to Africa and I treat, the Africans are very famous for heartburn, and I treat heartburn with moxa. That's not what he's saying. He's saying, I'm treating TB, you know, lymph issues, you know. That's what moxa tends to resonate with.
Yeah.
So, you know, now, yeah, I believe that there probably is some properties in the moxa itself. You know, that it's not just heat, but I don't know what they are. So. Would you like to go over?
Sorry, can you come back later about swallowing? If you have problems,
About swallowing,
patients
okay.
having swallowing problems.
Hello.
Hi.